All right. Well, welcome to today's Qualified at the Intersection. Sometimes I got to come on camera. And Donald Trump has done some pretty crazy things, but that press conference yesterday was bananas. I mean, I I can't help but ask myself, even though I know the answer, what would happen if a black person, woman or man, was the president and spoke that way at any time? I feel fairly certain that they would have been removed from office because his vocabulary is extremely limited. He doesn't have a good use of words. He rambles. He is racist and sexist and threatening to both citizens and then other countries. I mean, it's shambles. It was just shambles. And it is a prime example of how white supremacy kind of papers over itself and calls it good. I mean, really, Donald Trump could not compete with anyone on anything because he is so disordered in his thinking and his mind. And there was the report about his family's wealth and how their wealth in this administration has, you know, superseded anything he ever made, any wealth he ever made. Because functionally, I had heard that the wealth he had, let's say before he started politics, was like the equivalent of the same amount of money he inherited. That's how bad a businessman he is. But the presidency has presented not a business opportunity, but a just theft opportunity. His son has this private club. They charge all this money and they openly say you'll have access to cabinet members. I mean, it's almost like they're telling everybody this. And then people are like, yay, go, Donald, go. I mean, it's just so crazy. And his behavior is that of a terrorist. He behaves like a terrorist. He threatens people. He tries to blackmail you to get what he wants. He's like a baby. He's like an angry, insane, and it's not fair to babies because babies are the way they are because they're just growing and developing. He's not, I don't even know what he is. Like, and he has no shame. He has no cortex or part of his brain that functions with shame or humility. He is outwardly saying he's mad at Greenland or mad at Norway because he didn't get a peace prize, and so he's going to take Greenland from them. I mean, this is nuts. But that's not all the reason about Greenland. Part of it is some of you have heard the son, I believe, of Estee Lauder. Estee Lauder, the makeup brand, Estee Lauder makeup brand. He's a born billionaire, born rich like Trump, and apparently he has been in Trump's ear about wanting the mineral rights in Greenland. And apparently the same guy who wants mineral rights in Ukraine. These billionaires are just carving up the world blatantly, openly. In the old days, they used to have the decency to do it behind a curtain in the back room and pretend they weren't doing it. And so, people in Greenland are talking about exit strategies, how they would flee to Norway. Is there going to be bloodshed in the snow over Greenland? This is literal conversations. Now, I learned today that Norway and the Danish in general have been some of the first people to respond when the United States sought help. When the United States had the Gulf War, they were there. Danish folks have been there anytime the U.S. military asks, which just goes to show no good deed goes unpunished. And don't help people who have no good intentions because they're never gonna treat you right in the end, right? But that's what the Danish people have now learned. And so what I really wish, and I think Governor Newsom talked about this today, Europe and Congress. And I know it's an impossible dream with Congress, and maybe it's partly impossible in Europe, but they have to stop negotiating with a terrorist. And Donald Trump is a terrorist, and you can't negotiate with him. There's never going to be an end to what he wants. He's like, oh, if you don't do this, I'm going to take 10% tariffs on your whatever. Look, I've heard that the European Union has something called the bazooka that around trade that they can use it. If no one stops him now, internationally or internally, this guy is out of control. That press conference proved how racist, sexist, crazy, insane, terroristic he is. He babbles. I mean, when he got up and went to the window, that was one thing. But, and then, DHS lies to our faces. There was sheriffs in Minnesota who talked about one of their off-duty deputies being stopped, a woman, asked, "Are you a citizen? You don't look like a citizen." Now, many people point out, well, they're now offended because it's one of theirs. Maybe they were offended before, but you have a situation where they are stopping people based on the color of their skin. This is literally what Jim Crow was about. You got to get off the sidewalk. You got to hide. You got to have your papers. You got ID, boy. What you doing out here, gal? This is, and to circle back around, what you are experiencing is what Black people have experienced in the United States since they forced us to this joint. This type of hyper surveillance, this type of threat of danger of violence, and this type of thing. And what I really hope is that if we collectively can ever get out of this, we have to make large scale systemic change on a scale this country has never seen. And we have to do it so that we as Black people don't have to continue to live this way, and that this lesson teaches us that nobody should have to live this way. This is crazy where we are. And, he ignored MLK's birthday because they are angry about the civil rights movement, giving opportunities to Black people, not special treatment. Bernice King broke it down. Her father, John Lewis, all these people, they didn't die to get special treatment or to, discriminate against white people. They're rewriting a story. We had no access. I've told the story in my book. I've told the story about how my mother, pre-affirmative action, went to a job interview at a children's hospital. The white woman who interviewed her talked to her, took her application, threw it up, balled it up, threw it in the garbage in front of her as she left the interview. That was how we lived. Affirmative action forced the woman in the future to at least read the interview and throw it out later. That's all we got, is the opportunity. And the fact that Donald Trump didn't mention MLK, that was intentional. They do not want us to have a place in this story. This is a white story only. And I wouldn't be surprised if part of Greenland is wanting to get more white people. I mean, these people, although they don't know who lives in Greenland, so that's a whole nother side story. But Donald Trump's absolute ignorance about NATO and about the money and treasure of lives that allies have given for the United States was insulting on a scale that is epic. And Europe has to be willing to say no more. I'm so worried that today he's going to get to Davos and people are going to start trying to kiss his ass or trying to figure out if they can give him another made up prize or some bullshit. It's not going to end. You cannot negotiate with a terrorist. And he is a terrorist. He is terrorizing people abroad. He is terrorizing American citizens. And I actually think that is partly why they pulled back on Iran. They pulled back on Iran because the regime said, well, they're shooting at us. They're doing this and that. The Trump administration has plans for us, baby. They have real plans for us, the United States, and they don't want to be put in a situation. They don't care, mind you, but they actually don't mind if protesters are killed. They don't mind if people are jailed for their thoughts and ideas. They are coming after people in Minnesota who went into the church. Now, me personally, would I have done a protest where you go into a church where people are praying or whatever they're doing? No. But is it illegal? ICE goes into the church, as people said. ICE goes into school terrorizing children. So why isn't that illegal? And all of those people who they target are going to have to get lawyers. They are going to need a lot of money and a lot of help. And that's why I was talking about the other day about discernment and watching what you're pulled into. Because these people seem stupid, the rest of them around him, Miller and Bondi, but they are playing chess. They are not that stupid. And Donald Trump does have an overarching desire. It's a restoration of white supremacy, and it's an emperor attitude. He wants to be the emperor of the world. You kiss his ass, you bring him gifts, frankincense, myrrh, and gold. Every time you come to the White House looks like some tacky QVC blew up in there, and so this is going to require, if we're ever able to get out of this, we're going to have to be willing to bulldoze things, including the addition. And I mean metaphorically and literally. We're going to have to be willing to make changes on a scale unprecedented so we never get put back in this trick bag again. And that means looking at the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court keeps punting on the tariff thing because they don't want to anger their leader. They don't know legally, there's certain legal conclusions they don't want to come to because of Donald Trump. 4 more weeks? Come on, you don't need 4 weeks. You know the answer today. I mean, and we functionally don't have any system of redress in this country. We don't have a Supreme Court that really is interested in following the law. Some of the federal courts may try to intervene, but then the Supreme Court comes and says, and you can't count on all the federal or other judicial branches because you have folks who are crazy like him. I mean, we are in the middle of a hostile takeover by terrorists. And Congress is talking about, well, he's just, there is Donald Trump at this point of the game. Everybody should know he's not just talking. Okay. When he says something, people, he don't chicken out all the time. That's a lie. That's a fairy story. They haven't chickened out on devastating the EEOC. They haven't chickened out on trying to push out Black people out of their jobs. They haven't chickened out on getting rid of women's fundamental rights to control their body. He hasn't chickened out on anything. That's a lie. And and he still has tariffs we are paying. And then there's this whole thing about, again, all the money he and his family have made, more money than they ever made running any business they've made in office. So I just, the news conference was definitely triggering because it was so insane. It was almost impossible to watch, but watching to at least understand what. And, as a Black person, I do have to say this, what a lot of white people are seeing with Donald Trump, the incompetence of his staff and administration. I don't mean their incompetence in the fact that they can carry out their devious plans. They're competent in that way. But are they competent for their jobs? No. But this is the unequal standard that Black people watch every day in the workplace. Don't get it twisted. Pete Hegseth exists in your workplace. Donald Trump exists in your workplace. All these people exist, and we stand by and we watch these people while we're being held to standards, while we're being accused of getting special treatment. We watch the people get special treatment. So if this offends you, you need to turn your eye to your workplace and see what else there offends you in the same way. Who else there offends you in the same way? Because if we can get out of this, we have to have fundamental change at every layer of our society. And really, this starts with the midterms. Now, I heard that Iowa has so many folks up for reelection or, turning over. So I would hope that the DNC swarms Iowa like it is a presidential election. Phone banking, calling, commercial, whatever needs to be done. If it's not done, then maybe grassroots people need to do it. I also heard that on Friday in Minnesota, they're going to try to do their own strike, their kind of statewide or citywide strike. And they've done what I said needs to be done on a national level. They've got trade unions, nonprofits, civic leaders, church leaders, all coming together to walk out on Friday. So I would encourage people to go along with that this Friday, the fact they're doing it in Minnesota. But I also like to see a national coalition of people coming together to encourage a walkout. I mean, I just don't know. They're trying to put Americans in jail for free speech. I mean, this whole Christian religion thing, mark my words, they're going to use that going forward in your workplace because they don't want to sit next to somebody with a hijab, or because they don't want to have a trans person in the workplace, or because they don't believe in interracial marriage. You think it's not a thing I'm saying? That's extreme. And so, sure, you might charge people who went into the church with disorderly conduct, but making them federal terrorists? I mean, these people they are the terrorists. They are the terrorists, but these terrorists are deadly serious. So anyway, that is my rant for today about the news. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about how merit is a MacGuffin. So you can look up MacGuffin in the interim. But I don't know. It was a lot. It was just a lot. So it was a lot for me. So now you got a lot from me.